Hello and welcome back, and today we want to look at Emby Media Server. It's something that I've very lightly touched on here on the channel and on the blog, but I do think it's worthy of discussion today, largely because a number of you are getting a little bit annoyed with Plex Media Server recently. Plex Media Server, as good as that application is, and we've talked about it a number of times in the past, it had to have been said that more recent updates in the last year or two have seemed to be a little bit bloaty. They've been focusing a great deal more on streaming services and stuff like that, and adding kind of other third-party sources to the Plex Media Server free and premium packages, and a number of you have been looking at alternatives. Maybe you've been looking at the applications that are already arriving with your NAS device. This is a Synology, by the way, the DS920, but a number of you have been going back to Emby. Emby Media Server is a great little application for out there for those of you that like to have a very bespoke and customized media server. I've not really touched it, if I'm honest, formally for about 2 years, but in today's video we're going to be looking at Emby on NAS. We're using the Synology, but pretty much everything we're going to talk about in today's video applies to pretty much all NAS brands that support the app. Now, I say supporting the app, it's worth highlighting that to download it, it's actually available in the package center from Synology. If you go into their own package center, you go into all packages, you can go all the way down to the bottom, and you go into the third-party apps, and as you can see straight away, it is not there in the E section. If you try and search for Emby there, you won't find it. Now, you can add it manually by adding a repository for you if you want, and I will be making a video in the near future showing you how to install it. But in today's video, we're going to look at, is Emby still worth your time as a media server in 2021? That's pretty much the focus of today's video, and I'm going ahead and using the Synology DSM 6.2 version of Emby, although you can go ahead and get it for DSM 7, and you can get it for Acer Store, you can get it for QNAP, you can get it for a bundle of different brands out there if you are running a NAS server. Just go to Emby's own website and it's all available there in the download area. Now, I downloaded it, I've already pre-installed it, as you can see. Let's get rid of those tabs. And I've already got it up here and running. I've already attached most of the media that we use for our Plex Media Server stuff. And if we click on it, straight away we can go into Emby. We've got all of the movies that we've used in previous videos. We've got all of those test files there at the bottom. And if we go down to the bottom, we've even got some TV shows too. Now, I've got an upcoming comparison video with Video Station, as well as a comparison with Plex Media Server coming soon. But again, we're going to look at Emby as its most modern version. This is the most recent version of Emby. We're not going to be utilizing an Emby Premier account. As you can see there at the top, we're using the free entry-level version of the app, and I will touch on in a few areas the difference between them. But remember, today's video is about deciding whether Emby is worth it as a media server in 2021 with your NAS. Now, it's also worth highlighting that this video will be looking at a lot of the settings and the details as well as we go through later on, but of course there will be some playback of media files, and during that we're also going to be looking at how it impacts the Synology NAS while it's playing files as well. So we're going to get that resource monitor up as well as we go through this, and we have a little look and what Emby's got and what it can do. And later in the video, when I play back those files, we're going to head back into the resource center to see just how it performed. So this is our Emby user interface. This is it by default. You can play with it a little bit. Let's go through some of the settings and options here. We've got the list of all the different kind of directories we've got here. Again, you can go ahead and create directories very, very easily. One of the early things you do notice about Emby as a media platform and as a media server, particularly when compared with Plex, and I'm going to try not to mention Plex too much, is it's certainly got a lot more customization. But with that, there's arguably a little bit more of a complex user interface, and it allows you to create an incredibly bespoke setup, as you can see here on screen. But with that, it also means it may be quite intimidating for a number of users. You can really create a very unique media server setup, and I would argue even better multimedia enjoyment than Plex in a few ways that I will touch on later on. But that it can be fantastically intimidating early doors because it wants it to be as customizable as possible. So moving away from that user interface, and we are using the web-based GUI. We're not going to be touching on like Amazon Fire Stick or Roku or phone use. That might be in another comparison video coming soon. But this is the settings board that you see here. There's lots of information and notifications on activity. There's all the alerts if there's any problems or bits that you've updated or installed. And on the left-hand side of the screen here, we can play with the user interface and change what we want to see. So early doors, you can change a little bit stuff there with the themes. If we go ahead and change it to maybe a Windows media server theme there, and again, you can change a lot of stuff here. We can go ahead and we can allow these settings to be updated. If we go back into the home setting there, we can now see it's just changed the background there. Not a vast amount, but certainly a little bit noticeable there. If we go into the display settings again, we can scroll down, and what you're going to see a lot of during this, by the way, is lots and lots and lots and lots of tick boxes. That's another thing that is both a blessing and a curse in Emby Media Server. Emby wants you to have a very customizable experience, and if you're prepared to put the time in, it is one of the best media platforms out there. Let's quickly flick to another one for the hell of it. Let's go with Blue Radiance. If we go into the home screen settings here, you can say which things you want to see, and a lot of that is those configurations we already saw, and again, lots of those green tick boxes. You can change a lot of the time the directories on the fly. So if we go in, change the order of those, and we will go into some of the options for the libraries later on. But a lot of the configuration options, you have to keep flicking back and forth to see the implementation of those changes on the fly, which I know isn't ideal for a number of users when you're looking at it and you're kind of going back and forth, when what you really want is to be able to see the implementation of those changes quickly. If you go back to the playback settings there, again, you can set defaults if you choose for that network quality. And again, a lot of that can be based on internal network quality and internet quality. So if you want the home network with your 1 GBE or greater, you can ensure that it immediately flicks to the highest quality settings. Otherwise, it will always just flick to automated or original quality. Same goes there if you want to have the sort of options you find on Netflix and streaming platforms where you, as you get towards the end of an episode, whether you want it to play forward, give you the option of flicking forward. And this is another part of Emby that I've always kind of enjoyed. It's the idea that not only are they trying to emulate streaming platforms, again, like Amazon Prime and Netflix and stuff like that, which is something that, I don't know, all of these platforms do with their own multimedia applications, but I think they cover a lot of the little things. And again, a lot of these things down here are going to be where that lives. But this thing about cinema intros is so wildly overlooked, in my opinion. Once you start using it, you suddenly realise it's a big part of the movie experience that very, and I really do mean very few media platforms are including. The ability to add trailers for movies and just recommendations around your content in a far more organic way. And I think if you have a movie night and you can have trailers for the most recent movies listed, that can really improve the kind of home cinema experience. And again, that's where Emby really does shine quite significantly. Subtitles is another area where I think subtitle generation and storage is better on Emby than pretty much any other media platform at the moment. Not just the customization for different languages, something everyone's always done, but a lot of the time it can be very, and I'm going to come back to that word again, organic feeling when you're utilizing subtitles on movies. A lot of people, when they have large media collections, a lot of people don't realise they need to have the subtitles on a separate track and for the media player to be able to pull those intuitively. And I think Emby does a better job of that. At least it did a couple of years ago. We might run some testing on that later in the video on the playback and its impact on the Synology NAS. Obviously, password and profile control are fairly evident, and you can create accounts, something that a lot of the brands, particularly Plex, don't really do as well with regards to multiple users. I think Emby is quite well regarded for the way it handles adding users and user groups and giving and removing control quickly. They do a better job, I think, than most brands out there. And again, the customization of that keyboard remote control and the kind of integration with smart services as well, I think to mixed results perhaps. Emby certainly has some of the best support of automated control services and direct control services and customization, but I would also argue that even when they do it better than everyone else, it's still not flawless. So if we go into the server settings again, we've already looked at the dashboard a little bit. Something I would also highlight, if you look at Plex, some of these options that we're about to go through now, generally Plex has put already into their premium services, Plex Pass. And Emby, although it does put some things behind the Premier wall, it doesn't put all of them behind there in the same way Plex has. And part of that is a lot of the analytical information that is more readily available in Emby. If we go to the settings menu here, we can look again, automatic updates. These are all fairly boring, useful things. But again, this is one of the areas which I find probably wildly overlooked. A lot of people, when they create a media server, don't just share the media on their home network, to their kid's bedroom, their own bedroom, the kitchen, the lounge and stuff. They want to give access to users outside of the home. And Emby allows creation of extra accounts in their free version. You don't even have to get the Premier, something, again, other platforms do charge for. They include it, but you can be quite thorough about it. So I've already created 2 user groups here, but if we create a new group here, give them a name, we'll call this one, we'll just call them guests. From there you can give it more. You can manage the server, or you can allow them to manage the server if you want, but of course most people won't want them to do that. And you can say you want to give them access to all libraries or give them access to certain libraries. But let's say I'm going to give them access to some libraries. I'm not going to give them access to the test file. I'm going to click save, and now we can create access control, parental controls. We can set up whether we want them to have live TV if we've attached, an NVR, DVR sort of setup. Also, on top of that, we can say if we allow them to have access to a lot of the metadata or a lot of the subscription stuff and the subtitle stuff as well. Again, lots of configuration options there with regards to guest groups. And again, you can change a lot of those options very, very quickly on the fly. That's a level of control that not only do few other multimedia servers provide to both end users and configuration for connected users, but on top of that, it's not behind the paid services, and that's something Emby does a very, very good job of. Now, you can have a look there. This is if we're going to be using the premium services, which we might touch on in a comparison video down the line. But next we'll go into libraries, where we've created the libraries for our content. And again, we can rescan. That's all fairly evident and everyone knows that. And again, I can create a new content there. We can go with some of this other stuff here. We can create a new library here. And again, we will delete it afterwards. We can go straight into home movies and photos, select a folder. So again, we're going to make our way into the NAS. I've already given it a group. We'll go into the volume. We'll go into the share. We'll go into the Plex media. And we'll find photos, and bosh, we can go ahead and click OK. From there, real-time monitoring, metadata saving if you wanted to save metadata on photos. Lots of stuff there, all readily available, nice and easy. Click OK, and boom, we're creating that, and it's going to start scanning that in the background for that album. If we go into some of the other albums here, so if we go into that movies folder here, we can configure a lot of those options. And obviously, because this is movie-based, there's a lot more settings. We can even enable or disable some of those advanced settings. But just to give you some idea of the depth this goes into. Firstly, it's the idea that the metadata can be saved locally and with a lot of the files being directly directories that these things are going to be saved into, being directly controllable by you, something Plex doesn't really allow in the same way. Again, scrolling down, you can pre-download subtitles for all of the contents of that media if you choose, something else rarely seen in a lot of media player server applications. On top of that, lots of little options there with regards to the background and the control. But again, a lot of it pretty obvious. Some of it, again, for those of you that have been using Plex Pass for a long time, you may have forgotten that a number of features that you're seeing here on screen are actually behind the Plex Pass subscription. And again, Emby is chucking those in straight off the bat. So again, network control about streaming over the local area network, it's going to get a little bit more complex, but a number of you who are quite concerned with access to your NAS are going to be quite pleased to see that port control is more readily apparent than it is on Plex Media Server. And again, all of the control options, all of the configuration, yes, they are available in other multimedia server apps. So Emby have hardly, reshaped the wheel on this. But what I will say is at least all these options are readily available. And the options, I would argue, although more complex, are a little bit more intuitive than I've seen from other platforms. Transcoding options, always a big thing for a number of people out there, because you've got multimedia, maybe you're running HEVC, maybe you're running some of that high 10-bit HDR stuff. You're going to need some of the hardware accelerated transcoding. It's worth remembering that hardware accelerated transcoding, as it says, requires the subscription. So you can use software transcoding, but you're going to need the paid system if you're going to use hardware transcoding. What that means is if you're going to be utilizing the embedded graphics or a GPU card or anything really graphically geared in your server, be it a NAS or otherwise, you're going to need to pay for that. But at least you've still got software options if you want for transcoding. And again, lots more configuration options, and I do love that there is an encoding preset with regards to H.264. Generally, a lot of media servers just blanketly ignore 264 because it's so easy to play. It's nice that you've got that configuration. Obviously, the encoding of audio is a completely separate issue, but a number of people, again, we're so focused on the difficulties of playing H.265 or HEVC type media that it's nice to know the configuration goes a little bit deeper than most on this. If you've created transcoding and encodes in advance or offline transcoding, those conversions will live here and they can permanently be kept as you need. Cinematic intros is something I've already talked about, and I've enabled all of these simply because I want to show off in a little bit some of this business of utilizing trailers. The idea that you can enable trailers pre and post movies. A number of you will hate the idea of that. One of the main reasons you went away from streaming services is you hated that they stuck what was ostensibly adverts at the beginning and end of movies. But I think a number of you with movie nights will quite enjoy having those trailers beginning and afterwards, and that these are taken from more recent services, not just stockpiled and downloaded trailers from very, very old features. Subtitles, as mentioned, save them locally, nice and easy, and I do think there's a lot of nice, interesting configuration options there. Webhooks, as mentioned, if you're going to be using home automation, Emby is probably one of the best out there for home automated services, smart home stuff, that sort of thing. And again, this is where your webhooks, and that's when you've got to sort of go into those sort of IoT recipes and stuff like that. Again, we can have a look at devices, lots of devices there that can be accessed. I'm only connecting with the one, obviously, at the moment. You can give it a name so we always know when it is, so we call it Robbie's laptop. Now we'll know that when Robbie's laptop's connected to this device, it's permanently saved. If you want to download files, this is an interesting thing. A number of people, this applies probably more to when you share your media server with other users. You can allow them to download the media from your NAS or whatever your media server device is to their local phone, their local laptop, their local tablet, and enjoy it, but they can only watch it within the Emby app. So again, it allows connected users to watch media offline at a later date, but again, stops them from downloading your content and keeping hold of it, and then potentially getting you in some slightly iffy share and legality, which again, I'm well aware is perfectly legal, but you wouldn't believe how widespread that kind of nonsense can get and get very effective in the industry. I think they get really dodgy about that. So I think Emby have covered their bases a little bit more there by locking it into the apps. Again, you're a local or admin user network, you're not going to take advantage of this feature, but it's nice to have that as a slight barrier for connected remote share users. If we go into the upload option, this is where we can upload photos automatically or manually from your mobile phone and get them directly into the Emby server. But as you can see, it requires the paid service. I should mention, if there's any glitches in this video, we are using OBS throughout all of this, so I apologise in advance if there are any sort of glitches while I'm scrolling in and out of the screen there and zooming in. DLNA, wildly overlooked in my opinion. A number of users who complained about Plex. I mentioned this in my 8th Mistakes Everyone Makes Plex video. DLNA and localized media enjoyment is so much smoother on Emby than it is on Plex. Plex seemingly needs to have internet access intermittently to bounce off the local Plex, the distant Plex server. And a number of users who want to have a purely internet-based setup, they don't want to open up ports or port forward. You know, they want to enjoy the metadata, all the scraped metadata, fine. But they don't want to open a channel to the internet in their NAS or any kind of media server. A lot of users don't really like that about Plex, that once they've got all their metadata, they sort of need to maintain at least a low-level internet connection. And that's something I think Emby does a very, very good job of, to enjoy DLNA, localized media control, and localized media enjoyment without internet connectivity. Now, DVR and live TV services, another thing that, again, requires the premium membership. Not a huge surprise, they all do that. But again, you do need to add a number of those services manually, and you need to make sure you've got a media tuner in order to enjoy them. But still, digital video recorders, all of these services are something we're going to touch on in more detail in the Premiere side of things. And then finally, there's all that log information we saw at the beginning about connectivity and stuff that's happening on the server, notifications of stuff that's happening on the server in real time. Then you've got the plugins that you can add in for all the stuff with the intros, all the stuff that's either pre-added or you can choose to add. So if we go for cinema intros, for example, you can configure a lot of those options. And this again comes back to what I was saying before. This system requires a little bit more time at the setup, but you will end up with a fantastically unique and enjoyable media server. Look at the level of customization. And this isn't something that you find on Plex. I'm not going to say that Plex doesn't have customization and add-ons, but I do think the add-ons and customization of Plex is significantly less customizable in its nature and the options open to you than you find on Emby there. Look at playback reporting here. You can install a number of apps very quickly, and then boom, we're installing it right now. We're installing plugins. We will have to restart the server in order to see them. But again, you can find out more about the server without going into the user interface of the NAS. Lots of lovely, lovely options. I might even make a video when I go through these to see which are the recommended ones to go in with, because the integration here between Emby and a number of other key services for statistics, media enjoyment and more, including, of course, IPTV plugins, fantastic stuff. And again, something Plex could really stand to catch up on. I think Plex may have become a little bit too corporate for some, and I think Emby is still keeping it a little bit more indie, arguably. And again, I'm talking a little bit. Metadata manager is the last thing. This is where a lot of that metadata scraping lives, everything from trailers to background information and more. But that's really, I know I've gone a long way about this, that is the full back end of Emby. So now we want to talk about the front end of Emby. There we go. It's been scanning all that media there from all the photos from before, all of that stuff. Let's go through each of these sections. So first, we're going to go into movies. Now in movies, we've got it all there. We've got the suggestions, we've got the trailers. And again, a lot of this is because we've only put a small library of content on here. There's not going to be a huge amount to see. We can go on a folder level, something very much missing from the Plex Media server. If we go into one of these options, and again, we do play a lot of these files every time we do our videos. If we go into Little Shop of Horrors here, unsurprisingly, we've got Little Shop of Horrors, we've got the information, we've got the description there. We can even access the trailer to it if we choose. So if we click the trailer banner, bear in mind, I've not put the trailer for this on the NAS. This is the trailer taken directly from Emby resources. So again, I've had to disable the sound, obviously, but as you can see, it's now streaming the trailer for us for this movie, nice and easily. Again, At the bottom, lots of information readily available and visible on all of the different actors. And if you do go into an individual actor, let's go for the absolute hero, that is Rick Moranis. There's a little bit of information about him, a little bit of information about him available on other sources. You can refresh that metadata as and when you see fit. You can go down and go to the sources about this guy, but of course the movies listed will only show the movies that you've got on your Emby Media server there. If we go back, and what we're going to do now, go into the options there, we can re-edit, we can play with everything, we can change a lot of the stuff there. And what we're going to do right now, and I'm just going to set this up for some playback where we can monitor the NAS, but for now, if we go ahead and click play, allow that to play there in the background, we're going to play that movie. As you can see, straight into the movie over the local area network. We've got the resource monitor, we've got a few spikes there for all the stuff that we've been doing while the metadata has been scraped. Skip forward, nice and easy. And again, do bear in mind we're using a web-based user interface here, using Google Chrome. This might be very different if you're utilizing the Fire Stick or the apps and stuff like that. Let's go into the CC, let's go to the options there. Let's go for subtitles. I'm going to search for some subs. Go ahead, but of course we're going to need to use the Premiere feature to do it in this way, unfortunately. Carry on there, disable that. Next, we can have a look at a lot of the quality settings. We're set to auto, that's going back to the original, but again, we can upscale, we can downscale. This is a 720p file, it's worth highlighting. So again, we can play around with these settings quite a lot. The upscale feature is, of course, very, very nice indeed. We're seeing a little, spike there on the network while we're playing it back, but nothing too crazy. Go back there, go back into these settings. Now we're going to do some transcoding. Let's go down to 240p. Let's go there. And of course, picture quality has degraded notably. There's a spike there on the CPU when we did that. And we'll go back. We'll go back into there. And then, of course, we can play, go for the stats for nerds. Always a pleasure. And there we go. We've got all that real-time information about the file. Can we zoom in? Yes, we can. And have a look there. We can find out more information about the file that we're playing back, the quality of the file, some lovely stats there. If I do run into some Emby transcoding tests for NAS, I'm most certainly going to be utilizing that screen quite significantly. Come out there. Again, let's put that back to the auto. Let's go back to automatic quality. Let it go back to the original. And boom, there we are. And we can see there that the stats for nerds there has once again just updated beautifully. Another thing we can do is picture in picture. Go for it there. And again, we can go back, come out of there. And the fact that we can do this on the file here, whilst everything's still going on, I'm quite a fan of. Although it doesn't seem to be playing as intuitively as I would have liked. I would have hoped that that would have played back quite easily with picture in picture, but it doesn't seem to have worked first time there. Go back, let's try and see if picture in picture is going to work for us here, because what we want to do is to be able to go back, but no, apparently not. It's not quite as useful as I would have liked. Anyway, so let's come out of the movie settings. Let's carry on and have a look at the files here. Let's go back to TV shows. Now, TV shows, I would say, slightly less results than I would have liked. It's worth highlighting when I do my comparison of Synology's own video station app. I'm a little sad that it only recognised the metadata for Black Books and Father Ted, not Mr. Bean, not Taskmaster, whereas the Synology application, if we go into the TV shows, it was readily able to find the metadata for all of these on the online sources. Something I was a little surprised by. It was still able to get all that information very, very quickly. So I'm a little disappointed in Emby not being able to pull those up, but let's go into this. So once again, we've got Black Books there, bosh, bosh, bosh. We've got all three seasons. Awful. Series. We have all three series. And from there, we can find out again more about the actors if we choose, but again, it will only use our own library database. But of course, we can go straight into IMDb, which will then link towards the actor in question. See there, lots of information readily available. So again, you don't need the Premiere account in order to do that. If we go into a random episode there, we can go and go through the options, lots of stuff there. We can do that offline conversion if we choose, but again, it's a Premiere app, so we can't really enjoy a number of those features. But if we go straight into the first episode here, lots of information there, we can click play. and it plays the file nice and easy. I'm sorry about not having the sound, but I'm sure 90% of you watching this heard the beginning of the intro to this TV show while that was happening. It's also worth highlighting at the top there that you can stream to another device if you choose, if you've listed the streamable devices in the background. And again, lots of easy configuration options there. No right-click options on the web browser. We can go into different modes. We can change the playback speed. Let's get those stats back up there on screen. And again, we're playing it relatively low quality. Again, this is a 480p file. We can go for a crazy downgrade there in the quality. And we change it to just a simple transcode using software. We can go back into the stats. We can see a lot of CPU utilization while we played with a lot of that transcoding earlier, and the new transcoding happening in real time. If we go back in, let's get rid of that. And now we'll stop the file. Stop there. We'll come out. And that is the user interface there of an average TV show. Next, we can go into the home movies. These are the files that I've uploaded. And again, it started sequencing. There's the videos of those. If we go into photos, we can find out more about the photos that we've uploaded there. Let's go into a random photo of a cat. Photo there. And let's see if we've got any real-time information. Again, we can download it locally if we choose, but it has to be said that the options for photos a little bit more limited overall. Look at the beigeness of that meal. If we go through the options again, we can use some filters, but photo control isn't Emby's strong suit. I do think Plex does a better job of photos, particularly with the AI stuff, as well as your NAS's own applications, from Synology Photos to Moments to QNAP's QMaggie. There's lots of other stuff out there for that kind of thing. If we go into the 4K, this is a test file. Now again, this is going to be a similar user interface. These are the files that we've tested previously in our Plex performance test videos. So unsurprisingly, there's next to sod all information that's going to be pullable on these, because all they are is test files. Like this one is a 10 megabits per second H.264 or HEVC 10-bit HDR file, but there's no real-time information. There's no metadata to scrape. If we click play, it's a bit of a tough file, this. And as you can see, it's straight away gone into that quality because that's where we kept it before. So if we switch back to auto, it's going to need to convert it because this is an H.265 or HEVC file, and you need to have licensing and appropriate pattern support. But again, we're going to see it struggle there. This is nothing to do with Emby. This is more to do with the media server itself, depending on the unit you've got. But again, at least it's playing back that file, but of course there's going to be no metadata readily available. I still love that Stats for Nerds thing there. Huge fan of that there in the background. But I've got to say, Emby right now in 2021, for me, is looking still like a very viable option. It is lacking some of the features and probably a little bit of the polish on the user interface that I've seen from Plex in more recent years. If we change the configuration, we change some of that home screen settings there, maybe look at changing the theme. I would say, again, we're seeing it here that they've still continued to lock some of these features behind walls, and it could be better in my opinion. I think Emby doesn't have the clout or the reputation that Plex has to lock some of these features behind a Premiere. It's still very, very popular as an app, and I am looking forward to following up this video with some testing on client devices. But in answer to the question at the beginning of the video, do I think Emby is worth using on a NAS in 2021? 100%. I still think it has more customization than Plex Media Server ever has or even had. And if you're prepared to put the time in at the beginning, I think you will see better results for your multimedia enjoyment on an Emby NAS than you will on a Plex NAS. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do let me know if you did. We will be comparing Emby versus Plex in our next video, and I look forward to showing you that and show you some of the pros of each. I've got several of them ready to rock, and I'm looking forward to showing that comparison. I'm sorry this has been a bit of a long one. I've had to create this video if you are a user that has never used Emby. So although it may have been slow and ploddy for some of you, it's important that I covered all the bases. Thank you so much for watching. Click like if you've enjoyed the video. Click subscribe to learn more. And if you are interested in getting a media server and need a bit of a helping hand, go to the free advice section of NAS Compares in the description It's free, it's unbiased, we're not paid to do it, we're not going to charge you any money. All you've got to do is contact us. It might take us an extra day or two to respond to you, but we will get back to you nonetheless with the right kind of recommendations for your multimedia setup. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.